Welcome to the Interior Design Podcast. I'm Hayley Roy, a commercial interior designer with a passion for creating beautiful functional spaces.
And I'm Cheryl Sutton, an interior designer and architectural designer. Hayley and I have worked together on various projects over the years and have plenty of insights to share with you guys.
On many episodes, Cheryl and I team up to bring you engaging and lively discussions. Our differing views often lead to interesting debates, giving you two sides of many topics we cover. While Cheryl won't be on every episode, when she does join, it's always insightful.
That's because we feel strongly about interior design and the importance of educating designers. A lot of what you'll hear from us, you won't learn in a course. As designers, there's so much we need to know in order to do our jobs well, and we want to give you a forum where you can access the information you need wherever you are.
Whether you are an aspiring designer, someone designing your own home, or a seasoned professional working in residential or commercial design, this podcast is here to help you improve and thrive. We're not about ego-stroking interviews with big names. Instead, we focus on practical advice that you can apply directly to your work.
You'll learn about different products, their applications, and sustainability practices. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge you need to excel in your projects. And remember, if it's not fun, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So also expect a bit of humour and a few expletives along the way.
Maybe a few innuendos. Now, a quick note on production. We are interior designers, not sound producers. I'm handling the editing myself, so please be patient with any technical glitches. I'm improving my production skills as the podcast progresses, and I appreciate your understanding.
Sound editors out there that would like to volunteer their skills in return for a mention, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Interior Design Podcast. Let's dive in and start this journey of learning and fun together. Welcome to the Interior Design Podcast. We are in our new studio.
Mm-hmm. Got video, we've got a little lounge set up. It's amazing.
This is my warehouse.
I love it.
Cheryl was here sweating yesterday. I've set up all the microphones and
I moved the furniture.
Cheryl created this.
I brought the muscles and you bring the brains.
I'm the brains and you're the brawn.
I'm not sure about that after we tried to lift this carpet yesterday and Hannah had to help us and I'm like...
But yeah, I think we've done really well.
It looks amazing. And I really love the fact, Hayley, that we're in the warehouse. I've got a really nice vibe about it. It's a bit funky, isn't it?
It's a mess over there.
Looks great here.
Today, we're going to talk about the process of interior design from concept to completion.
Yeah.
Cheryl, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, it sounds really straightforward, doesn't it? Like from an outsider's perspective, you'd think that the design process would be a straight line. That you do concept, you get your brief, you do concept boards, you then develop that and you take it through a process. As with anything, it's never as straightforward as that, is it? It goes off in different directions and it's maybe one step forward and a couple of steps back along the way. So from my point of view, it depends, doesn't it, upon the client. If the client has got a really clear vision of what they're trying to create in a space, we take direction from that. But then I think some of the challenging schemes that we work on are the ones where there's almost no real brief and no real direction.
It's okay if they don't have an opinion and then you just crack on with it and do it.
Yeah.
But the trouble is when they don't give you direction and then they don't like what you've done, don't know where to go, you don't get any feedback. Feedback is so important, isn't it?
No, always for me, starting off with getting a really good understanding from the client of what they are looking to achieve in terms of the feel of the space. I think on a podcast about the importance of the connection of design in relation to brand, if we're looking at commercial businesses. My first point of call will always be just getting as much information from the client as possible and then starting to pull together a visual representation of where I think the design should head. So they're constantly giving feedback every stage throughout the process.
I always find that when you talk to the client a lot at the beginning, you don't have to redo stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're on the same page as them.
Yeah, because you're actively listening. I think there's probably situations where you can ask loads of questions, but if you're not listening properly, you're not going to get it right, are you?
I always say that the most important thing about being a designer is the ability to listen. That's like my mantra, because I love tapping into other people. And I think the difference between designers is huge, and some designers have got their own style, and you go to that because they have that certain style.
Yeah.
But most people don't want. They want you to realise their dream. They want to come to you and go, "This is what I want. Make it happen." And I get so much pleasure out of that because I'm really good at being able to communicate and tap into the client.
It's almost like you take. There's a feeling, isn't there? For me, there's this feeling.
There's something in you.
Yeah. In me.
Something in me. Do you remember About Us one?
Yes, I do. Cute.
So if you want to hear about what we're talking about, the About Us podcast.
It's just always been in me. Anyway, now I've got to try and remember what it was. So what I was going to say is there's this feeling that I get when someone, and it can be anyone, if I'm talking to anyone about design, if they've got an idea, I can't just take their idea and be like, oh, that's a great idea, that's what I'm going to do. I can't physically do it. There's something about taking someone's idea and then pushing it.
Grow it.
And growing it, yeah. Delivering them. I think for me, there's this feeling that I get when a client comes up with an idea or a vision, and it's just like a little seed. You take that and you develop it and grow it. For me, that's where the real satisfaction comes in, because then you deliver that back to the client. That they would have been happy with you just taking their idea and implementing that. But you've not done it. You've thought...
You make it better.
You make it better. Yeah. And I think I love that. I think that's just really cool.
No, I really like working with people rather than, I always say to people, like, I work for you. What can we do? I'm going to do is grow it and give you tons of ideas.
Yeah.
And then I'll feed these out into you maybe with some options. So the first thing I would do is have that meeting with ask millions of questions. Millions, not literally,
but yeah, lots and lots of questions.
A lot of questions.
Yeah.
Things like, I was at a meeting the other day doing the initial consultation, and I was asking the client their brand. The guy who owned the business was there. I'm working on a garden centre restaurant, a 250-seater restaurant. And there was an owner and then there was a manager. The manager was so lovely. He was so in the business. And I love working because the business was really successful with a very dated interior.
Yeah.
So you always know that whatever you do to that restaurant is going to make that more successful. More successful.
Yeah.
My point was, in concept stage, he was like, I was like, what's your values? In a business, you have a vision and a mission normally, don't you? What's your vision? What's your mission? What are your values? They're good things to ask a business or a personal client. What's your mission? Not necessarily what's your vision and mission, but maybe what's your values? Are you a family person or are you a... So I was asking this guy, what are your values? And he rolled his eyes.
Oh, did he?
And he was like, oh God,
no.
here we go. This is the fluffy bit.
Oh, no.
And he was really not. He knows he's got to do it.
Some people are receptive to that kind of stuff and others are not.
And you've got to shut up if they're not, because they're...
Yeah.
So, like,
No, but I want to understand what your ethics and values are.
Yeah.
But please, what are they?
Stop talking. Listen to the rolling of the eyes.
Yeah.
So some of my questions are, obviously, vision, mission, values. The next one is, if your brand were a person, who would it be? And I nearly asked that question just to see his reaction.
I'm not going to lie, Hayley. I'm not comfortable with that one.
Though, the Noodle Bar in Colchester, though, they told me, Sue, who's the gay lady on telly, Sue something? She's
Sue Perkins.
Sue Perkins.
Yeah.
That was their
She's
right? And
it's a business.
Yeah. Sue Perkins, the one who
dark hair,
short hair.
Yeah.
Always wears suits.
Yeah, dated. Oh God, what's her name? Isn't it Claudia Winkleman? Didn't she used to date Claudia Winkleman used? Oh God, I might have got that totally wrong. I don't keep up to date with
Claudia.
any kind of current affairs. And that's interesting, but I also don't like that question. Don't ever ask me that question.
I think I asked you that question when you were branding Rebel.
Who would I be if I was a person?
I think it's in my branding work.
Oh, do you remember when we did that branding workshop? And then after about 3.5 hours, we were sat in the old studio. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
In the evening?
Yeah.
We'd have pizza.
We
were drinking gin. I remember sitting in the studio for 3 and a bit hours, getting a little bit drunk with you, eating pizza. And then as it was a light bulb moment. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we both went...
Never forget that.
And I was like, oh, my God, that's it. That is it. This is the name. This is the brand. And you were like, oh, my fucking God, yes. 100% you. That's what we're doing.
But that's the joy of the branding workshop. So this is another thing I would do as a process. If someone didn't know what their brand was or who their brand was, you quite often go into a really successful business and they've got a logo. They don't know what the purpose is. They want to change the logo.
Or what it represents.
Redesign it for them. But for me, it's so much more than just a logo.
Yeah.
You want to know the personality of that business.
Yeah.
You want to know who it is.
Yeah.
And this is where that question comes from. But when I gave that question to the noodle bar, they were all over it. So you've got to really tap into your audience. If your brand was a person, who would it be?
I would shut you down in an
who
instant.
Would I be? You would be a rebel. You would be you. Harp Design. Who would I be?
Oh, I don't know enough.
Good at celebrities.
No, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Maybe it needs to be like, what would your spirit animal be? Like,
I'm a monkey.
Are you?
I'm definitely. I was born in the year of the monkey, but I've always loved monkeys. I love monkey wallpaper. I love monkey. I loved it. We loved it when we did Swire and we did put the monkey
light
lights.
fittings.
Oh
yeah, they were cool.
But there's some really cool ones, isn't there? Going back to concept.
Yeah.
So if someone's got a brand, sometimes have brand guideline documents.
Mm-hmm.
Always ask for those at the beginning. But yeah, it's just asking loads of questions and just being really in tune with your client. Having that rapport with your client is so important.
Yeah.
Especially in residential.
Yeah.
They've got to like you and you've got to listen. Because if you don't listen, you're done.
Something that I actually have really tapped into in terms of questioning that concept, like initial discussion stage, has come about off of the conversation that we had, or the podcast, that we had with Karen.
Mm.
And we were talking about, obviously, psychology of colour. If you haven't heard that podcast, honestly, I can't recommend it enough. It was the first one that we released, wasn't it?
One that we did.
I learned so much from that podcast, from chatting to her. That's something that I try and take into my job when I'm talking to people about what they're trying to understand, what they want from a space, how they want it to feel, what that feels like, what that looks like, how that feeling looks like to them. It's really cool, isn't it?
I love it. I love that first bit where you're getting to know people. I love all of it, but...
Oh, the first bit's definitely the best.
I think people don't understand how much goes into what we do.
Mm.
And when you start asking questions, they realise how deep you go.
Do you go really deep? Hayley? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. You have to. You have to.
How deep?
Yeah. I think the concept, so we touched on the fact that initial discussions with the client are super important, and gaining as much information and understanding about their brand or their personality if they're an individual, and maybe taking on some of the elements that we touched on with Karen about understanding what feelings look like to them. Branding we've briefly touched on, and then the next stage for me is about pulling together that visual representation from that information that you've provided. This is what I think would work, and this is what I think would look really cool. Actually, off on a bit of a tangent, I really want to do a podcast about, in fact, I think this is what we've got Pippa coming in for, right? In September. I've been saying to Hayley for ages, I really want to do a podcast with a fully qualified architect where we can talk about how important it is, or if they don't think it's important, about how the connection between interior design and architecture in terms of buildings, not just new buildings, but with maybe historic buildings that are listed. Because that's definitely something that runs through my design. I'm so conscious and so aware because of the training that I've had and the degree that I've got under my belt. I studied for 6 years at uni and got my degree in architecture. I only got my first part one. That was enough for me. That's something that I'm really passionate about. That I think that's something that I bring to the table, is not just doing something that is completely against what building I'm working in.
To be in tune.
There is a time and a place, Hayley, where you can do it, but that's something that I'm really interested in talking to Pippa about when she comes in.
Oh, I can't wait. But Pippa is amazing. She protects. She works for her dad's partnership, NJ Architects in Ipswich.
Yeah, she's cool.
She's amazing. We're excited to get her.
So yeah, concept images, visual representation of what your thoughts, or even sketches. I love sketching stuff out to show people, oh, I'm thinking of this, or we could do this. And again, it's always like a work in progress, and it gets developed and changed along the way.
I think don't be afraid of sketching something out and it looking rubbish either, even if it's just a box. Just anything to communicate.
Yeah, what's in your head.
What's in your head, you think is in their heads is communication, and communication is so important in interior design. I think you've got to constantly be reassuring the client that you know what you're talking about, and explaining why you're doing stuff as well, especially that early stage. Concept and general arrangement I always do together. You know, Pinterest board potentially. I don't really do that anymore unless I'm messing about on my sofa on a Saturday night and I just want to get some ideas down. But generally I'll put something straight into a design pack. Yeah, general arrangement as well. Once you've got the concepts in the general arrangement, you've got the general gist of where you're going. Yeah. You speak to the client about it.
I was going to say, that's the point, isn't it? That's the opportunity for you to get that first critical point of feedback from the client to make sure that you are heading in the right direction. Because this is the other thing. You can ask as many questions as you want and think that you understand and you know where you need to go with something. And sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you present something for feedback and you get a big fat no. And you're like, I hate that.
I don't get that very often anymore.
There's nothing wrong with that, though, because it's a process. And sometimes the process is by elimination, isn't it? Rather than someone just going, yeah, I love it all. And actually, do you know what? I like the clients that say, oh, no, I don't think much of that. Because I'm then like a dog with a bone.
Oh, me too.
Obviously.
Yeah, give me some negative feedback.
Because then I'm like, let me explain. As designers, you have to be able to justify every single decision that you're making.
100%.
And if you can't justify it,
you shouldn't be using it.
You shouldn't be using it because you've not given it any thought. You've literally just stuck it in. Oh, that'll work. Hang on, will it? Does it work with that?
Why does it work? It has to have a meaning behind it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then everything that you've got has got more depth.
Yeah.
And also communicating that to your client. You might go that thought process and all the meaning.
Yeah.
You haven't communicated that back to the client. They won't enjoy the interior.
So yeah, getting feedback at that stage, really positive, hopefully positive feedback. If not, maybe a bit of negative, stuff needs changing, but it makes the process a lot easier, I think, in the long run, doesn't it? Especially in terms of like a general arrangement or a floor plan of the space that you're working on.
When I get feedback, I always say, tell me what you hate. If you even just don't like it that much, or even don't
just
love
unsure about it, maybe.
Like I don't want to just, and I'll go through it and I'll explain why I've done everything. But if you don't like it, let's change it. I don't want you to look at your experience with me and swear about me 2 years' time and really swear about a decision that we're making now. Because if you don't love it, you might be doing. So make sure that you tell me, you communicate to me, and I really encourage that.
It could be that you love something and you're completely on board with it and in the moment, but then in 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5, whatever, as naturally the business evolves or your tastes evolve and change, it's natural that potentially in a few years you might be like, actually, I wish we'd have done that a bit differently.
Yeah. Then you can change it, can't you?
Yeah. So I think the key really is once you've got to that point where you've got some feedback, good and potentially areas that you can work on and develop, that's the kind of next stage really. Develop design, isn't it? Develop design is never, or development of design is never one step in the process and it's, oh, brilliant, love it all, sign it off, next stage. That in itself brings the real depth of feedback and potential changes. Hopefully though, if you've got the concept side of things pretty much where it needs to be, you shouldn't have to change too much. But
I think it depends on the client and how much they can visualize what you're saying. Yeah. Some people just can't visualize anything, even if you've got something on until you get it to a 3D visual. I have no idea what it's going to look.
Yeah,
and some people are really visual and can picture it all in their head. They're the easier people to work with because they can picture it as you're doing it.
Yeah, it's a bit more of a challenge, isn't it?
If you use pictures in your concept board, this is the lighting. I try and use actual things. I'll try and use a picture. where there is something in that picture I can use and specify.
Yeah.
I know that I can get that light through.
Yeah.
So then the next stage isn't so difficult. When you're just searching Google, it comes with experience. But if you're just searching on Google, you're just kind of putting together an artistic impression thing or something, you know, that's a picture, but actually that light isn't available off the shelf. We have to have that made bespoke. Then it's just not put in a budget. Especially for a commercial property.
And I think that then comes to when we get to the point where you're costing projects and we talk about the value engineering side of these schemes, because ultimately it is just the way that it goes. Things change, people's budgets change. They can change throughout the project. People's circumstances and business circumstances change, don't they?
Where there was a flood and the client thought the insurance company was going to pay for everything.
I remember you saying.
And we got about a quarter of the way through the project going, specify what you think is right. And we were Carnadine flooring and herringbone and nice lights and we got about a third the way through the project and literally they were like, insurance company and for this, and they excluded certain things that we put in and they put budgets to flooring and things which we didn't know, and the rest of the project we had to really skim on. It was such a shame because the first part of the project was gorgeous and then the second part of the project where I'd specified a bar with a whole load of brickwork on it, it got value engineered down to 4 months.
This is a really important that's a really important point that you've just raised, because without, you know, it's not about like selling designers and what they bring to the table, because hopefully most people would appreciate what we do as a job, but I think it's so important in those situations where you are having to value engineer something. If you were a client working on a project, just delivering a project on your own, actually having the expertise of a designer that can say to you, we need to cut some costs here, especially in commercial, it generally is a slightly larger sum of money in terms of budget that you're cutting. I think I mentioned to you a project that I was working on this year and last year, the budget got cut almost in half. And it was a £7 million project, refit. All of a sudden, we had to try and make it a £3.5 million project. I'm like, okay. And I think as a designer, having the expertise of a designer that can show you or advise you on the areas that you can reduce spend on without it negatively impacting the whole design, I think that in itself is, we're worth our weight in gold for that.
Agree.
Because there's a lot of people that be like, oh no, we'll just do that. Absolutely not. That is not the area that we're cutting back on, because that's a key feature in the space. There's other ways of making those savings and it's not there.
How do you feel when you're in a meeting with an architect and structural engineer, the contractors, and you're generally the only girl, aren't you?
Yeah, there's been a lot of situations where I am completely outnumbered, but then at the same time, there's a lot more women in construction now, isn't there? And actually, you were going to ask me a question. Stop talking. It's that second coffee. No breakfast and 2 coffees. What were you going to ask me?
I was going to ask you, quite often you get, and I love watching you in a meeting because you can hold your own with a whole lot of big, hairy men. And I just wanted to talk about it really, because some people, I think, would get quite intimidated in that situation. And you know, you and I in a meeting would both hold our own. I can imagine some designers find that really difficult because you've got to be really strong. I was having a fight with someone about some flooring, and they were like, the client wants to carry a whole lot of barrels across this entrance. It's going to be 100 kilos at a time. Well, okay, there's only one kind of flooring it can do, and that's with the metal strips in. And I don't want to pay for it. I was ended up having, my integrity, I couldn't actually specify what he wanted to specify and what the contractor wanted to specify because of the money. I couldn't put that because it was not fit for purpose. It's just not. Well, I was having this conversation with the client
because obviously, you know, ultimately he's paying you for your expertise, but at the same time, the buck stops with the client.
I don't think that ever got heated. It just got, you can do that, but it's not going in my design. Or if it does go in the design pack, it's going with a massive disclaimer saying, I don't recommend this is the client's choice. I think you've got to keep your integrity, But you've got to be able to be flexible. If the client doesn't want to spend the money, it's going to get destroyed in a few years. He's going to have to replace it. He's not going to come knocking on my door and say you shouldn't have specified that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you do really have to cover your arse, don't you? I think to a degree.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's sort of arse covering. I think it's more kind of integrity, isn't it? It's more. You've asked me to do this, like you say. You've employed me as an interior designer. I'm giving you advice.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to listen to that advice, that's absolutely fine. You carry on.
Yeah,
and you reap the consequences. Don't expect me to jump on board with that.
Yeah.
Because I don't agree. And we can happily disagree.
I think that's the key.
I'm not going to get...
It's about actually being able to say, we don't have to agree on everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. Can you design to a budget?
Can you design to a budget? If someone has got a budget and you are interior designing their restaurant and their budget is unrealistic, I don't think you can design to a budget. I think if someone says to me, can you design a project for my restaurant? Or I've got 100 grand, or I've got 500. 100% I can design for them. But if you want me to just design and not be involved after the design process as part of the value engineering process and everything, I can't design the budget because people want more than they can afford. So someone might say, I want marble in my bath, but the budget is this.
Yeah.
Budget isn't marble, but it might be. You never know. If you don't spend money on really nice toilets and really nice basins, we can make marble happen.
It's just about it.
But you've got to balance it.
You've got to manage
playing with the money. Isn't
it?
It's about playing with the money and making it work.
And I think we've spoken about this numerous times, that actually it's about managing people's expectations throughout the process. Like we've said before about the ability as a designer to stand up and actually communicate well with clients, whether it's good or bad, if there's a problem on a project, or if a client is saying, this is what I want, and as designers are saying, if it's, for example, that they've got this beautiful marble that they've had their eye on for years and they want that in the bathroom, but their budget doesn't allow it, you've got to be upfront and honest with them and say...
But then there might be one thing that person wants, and then everything else goes out the window, so we can get that.
Yeah.
So it's just about playing with money, and it's
definitely
chucking everything in, be really aspirational, and then after you've done, you bring it down.
Yeah. We've moved. Something that I just wanted to actually talk about really quickly is the importance, I think, and I know this kind of probably goes without saying, I think it's really important that you get a final sign-off of the development design before you start costing anything. Once developed design has been fully developed, and again, you're getting feedback from the client throughout that process, you naturally get to a point where you're like, okay, the design is pretty much, we're there with it, and maybe 95 or 99% there with it. There might be a few points that need further development or thought, but you're pretty much, the bulk of it's done. And I think at that point, it's really important for everyone to make everyone's life easy, is to get that final clarification from the client that they're happy with what you've come up with, before you then start taking it to the stage of, okay, we need to get this costed. That's always a very nerve-wracking time, I think. Because whilst you can get a really good understanding of budget and product cost, especially in the market that we live in now, the cost of materials and the cost of labour are just insane. We've spoken about this before. And I appreciate that things move on and things change and the rate of inflation and naturally everything gets more expensive, but it all happened off the back of COVID naturally and Brexit. I remember having conversations with people and they were like, oh, well, it'll all come back down. And I remember thinking, it won't go down.
It will stay for a while.
This is the natural progression. This is how the world works. It changes on a weekly basis. Material costs can change on a weekly basis. So whilst you can put all of that effort in and all that time into thinking that you're working to a budget or to the client's budget because you know the cost of things, if the development design of the design takes 3 months or 6 months or longer because it's a big project, that budget almost becomes out of reach,
Yeah.
which is why then we get to the stage of costing. It's always a bit scary and a little bit, is something going to come back and be 3 times the price that I thought it was because of the nature of what we've just said? And then comes the fun part of trying to, okay, let's pick it apart a little bit and look at ways that we can make some savings. Key areas that we can make savings.
I really like doing everything and designing and working all the way through the project. Some clients will only want you to design and then they'll take on the project. I like being involved all the way through because then you get that control and that ability to be able to value engineer, because you can just go, right, this is aspirational. What can we do to make this work? If the client's got a budget of this, okay, so we want a living green wall. We might not get a living green wall, but we might get a fake green wall that's a really good quality one, so it looks great, or a moss wall, or we might get some wallpaper of a forest type. You don't have to spend a shit ton of money. This is a perfect example of where we're sitting. So we've recycled absolutely everything to create this set. It's not about spending money, it's about being creative, you know? And I think that's one of the things that interior designers can give to people, that creative edge where you don't have to spend.
I was going to say, it's so nice when you get a project where money's not an issue. No, budget's not even on the radar.
It's
what am I talking
always
about?
on the radar.
Exactly. What is really frustrating for me is when I talk to a client and they don't want to give that information to me.
Oh, they don't trust.
You're not. It's it's a really old school way of looking at stuff, isn't it? If you know what, I wouldn't go into a shop to buy some clothes and someone says to me, "Oh, what are you looking for?" And I tell them what I'm looking for. I'm going out for dinner or whatever, and this is what I want. And okay, well, how much money are you looking to spend on this dress or whatever? You tell me. Do you know what I mean?
I love that.
Well, you tell me. I just wouldn't. And design and I don't know. It's all a bit cloak and dagger for me. I'm like, just be honest. I'm not going to over design something for you. Or if you've got a really healthy budget to work to, it's not about taking the piss. It's about getting you what you want for the best possible price.
If you look at CDM management, budget is one of the things that is important to be communicated under CDM. So if you're doing construction design management and you're principal designer, in the notes, I've got like a template which I took off when I did my CDM training. If anyone wants it, just give me an email. You answer certain questions.
What is budget?
And you have to give it. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can, but then you're stabbing in the dark. I've got a few little tricks though. When people aren't giving me a budget, I ask certain questions, and I really like this one. If you were talking about a brand that you wanted to spend money, so you're not going to give me a budget, okay, fine. Brand would you say you were looking at to spend? Would you go Primark or would you go Armani? Armani. Would you go next? So tell me a brand of where you want to spend. If you're going Primark, you're going cheap IKEA furniture.
Yeah, fast furniture.
Which we wouldn't recommend because it won't last 5 minutes. But you might have that. If I don't think anyone's ever employed me and said Primark, but they have said BMW and they have said. Who's ever said next? No one's ever said Armani to me, but because those kind of clients generally don't talk about budget, they just go
exactly.
They're just like, this is what I want.
Yeah. No, budget is important, and I think the value engineering side of things, which we obviously the stage that we got to, is that it can be challenging, but it can be.
I love it when you get to the figure, and you tweaked it all. When you project manage, and you tweaked it all, and you've gone to each contractor and go, right, can you just shave a little bit off, or how can we cut a bit of this? You have to do it all the way through, even if it's 200 quid somewhere. Yeah. If you do that all the way through, you can actually.
There are some real highs in this role, isn't there? From the initial feeling of excitement from a design point of view in terms of concept, through to development of design, through to the value engineering, which is a different vibe because it's more challenging, but then onto the delivery side of things, that feeling that you get when you've delivered a project for the cost that you've done it for, or for the client, and you know that what they've got is awesome. It's been done really well and the quality's amazing and the value for money is really good. It's like, oh my God, we've achieved that. We, the whole team, from designers, architects, contractors, suppliers, the client, their business, everybody. Like, we've achieved that.
When you do it, like we're just finishing off Southwell Racecourse and they've invited me to Ladies' Day.
Oh,
Can't
nice.
wait. But yeah, we're just finishing it up now and we're getting the final bits delivered. And it's just so nice. And everyone's been trying to pull in the same direction. I've been designing it while they're doing it, which is really
so hard.
And I'd send through a design and then the client would be like, no, I don't like that. And it's, you haven't actually got time to, you haven't got time to change it now. I've had a few conversations like that because everyone has really pulled in the same direction on that project. And it's been really satisfying to see that all come together. The grandstand looks amazing. I worked really hard on the flooring grandstand to get it really right. I put lots of different patterns in. I did Carndine. So different patterns on the floor.
Cool.
And I love it. So like it went in there when it was being laid. I was like, what? It looks amazing. But yeah, that's the high, isn't it, when you get to finish it? And some clients, the one disappointing thing, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, is sometimes people employ you, you do the design and you never see it. And you don't project manage or you don't see it all the way through. Yeah. And I haven't got time to go around the country and do stuff if the client's not to help them finish it.
Yeah, of course.
I could ask for, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants at the moment. I've got so much going on.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely to see if anyone's listening and they've worked with me and and I haven't seen any photos, please send them to me.
Oh. No, it's good.
I love it.
It's cool. I'm not really sure we've been very clear, Hayley, with the process. I don't think we should call it a process because it follows guidelines. Also, each designer will do it slightly differently.
I think that's the difficult thing about our industry is that every design is different. There's not a way of working, a way of pricing. The RIBA has really helped me. I price now on RIBA stages. And I get asked to price for RIBA stages as well. That really helps me price things.
Yeah.
But it's just about...
But I'm guessing
I love mood boards, tangible mood boards.
Yeah.
Some people like digital mood boards.
Yeah.
But it is such a vast industry. And also the qualifications are... Do you know what? I was listening to the Interior Design Business podcast the other day.
Yeah.
On this podcast, I would recommend if anyone's looking to get into interior design that they listen to this because it was all about apprenticeships. They have now got an interior design apprenticeship, which I am so happy about because I've had loads of interior designers come in as apprentices and I've had to put them on a customer service apprenticeship because they don't do an interior design one.
To enable them to learn so that at least it's a way in for them.
I do get very frustrated with the education system in interior design because you can just do a very short course and become an interior designer or you can go to university for a few years. But people who are coming out of university aren't getting taught things like LRV.
Yeah,
CDM.
we were talking to Lily, weren't you, upstairs about it?
She doesn't know any of that. And so Lily, who's working for HARP at the moment, she's doing the summer holidays. She's brilliant, but she doesn't know things that I think they should teach her in uni. She's brilliant at software.
But do you know what? I think a lot of designers come from different areas. My training was never in interior design. My degree was architecture. So I had an understanding of architecture, which then led me to interior design. It was a self-learning process. I've gotten the knowledge that I've got from an architectural point of view gives me a slightly different perspective than just going to college or uni and doing an interior design course that's very specific. It's not necessarily a bad thing because it means that the type of designers you get are much broader because their knowledge is different and broader. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm with you that there is key things that need to be taught.
LRVs, CDM.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know what that means, is light reflectance values, which is really important for critical surfaces if you're designing for public spaces. And CDM, construction design management, which if you're a principal designer, you might be needing that.
Yeah. But even if you're not principal designer, it's still so important to be aware of what the responsibilities are as in terms of your design and what you are designing and how you're managing that design or how the design is being managed. Do you know what I mean?
If you're an interior designer or a client, you need to know about CDM if you're doing any construction.
Yeah.
Because it's
a legal requirement.
It's legal, yeah.
Even a domestic house.
Yeah.
And this is what I find really interesting. If a plumber come in or a heating engineer come in and service your boiler, there is a responsibility on you as the client to manage the CDM.
The rule is that if you have more than one contractor on site at any one time, you need CDM. A lot of domestic projects, the contractor will take on principal designer and principal contractor role because designers, and I've worked with a couple of residential designers who had no idea what CDM was.
Mm-hmm.
As a designer, even if you're not taking on that role, you need to say in your terms and conditions you're not taking on that role.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it might be assumed that you're taking on that role.
Yeah.
And the client needs to make sure they know their legal responsibilities. Every project I quote for, I always send through the responsibilities so the client's aware of it. CDM is a minefield.
We should do a podcast on that.
We need a CDM advisor.
We should speak to Daniel Connell.
Jonathan Rensink.
Let's get him in.
He's brilliant. He said he'd do it.
That, I think we should definitely do that. I think that's huge.
That. So next podcast is Pippa.
In September.
I don't know if I'll be editing it.
Forget about what time of the year it is, what month it is.
I'll edit it as soon as it comes. But
Pippa.
Good.
Who knows where it will go, what we'll be discussing. I kind of love that. I quite like having these episodes where it's not so structured. The product side of things is great, but it's quite nice just to have a bit of a debate about stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Go deep. Haha. Such a dirty laugh. Sorry. No.
Love your laugh. Oh, you. Hopefully you have enjoyed listening to us talking about the process. Let's do it again. Do you need to go? You need to eat as well.
Thank you for joining us on the Interior Design Podcast.
If you liked this episode, please like, share and leave us a review.
We're on Facebook and Instagram at interiordesign.podcast and on LinkedIn as Interior Design.
We really value your feedback. So if you have ideas on topics you'd like us to cover or people you would like us to interview, please get in touch.
Thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.